Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. The front doors of the lobby opened, and Kale walked in, followed only by his driver. Marcus, the manager, was behind the counter and nearly choked on his own breath. "He's here," he whispered to the receptionists, already sweating. "Where's the translator?" No one answered. One of them glanced at the clock and mumbled, "He's not here yet, sir." Marcus went pale. "What do you mean not here yet? That man doesn't even speak English. Do I need to draw pictures for you?" Kyle reached the counter and said something in Korean, his expression serious. The staff looked at each other, completely lost. "What did he say?" Marcus asked. I don't know," one receptionist whispered. Kale repeated himself. This time with more firmness, Marcus pulled out a translation app on his phone, but the robotic voice said something that made no sense. Kale frowned, clearly irritated, and raised his voice. "Oh my God," Marcus muttered, wiping his face. "He's upset. I'm going to lose my job because of you people." Right then, Lila was pushing her cleaning cart through the lobby. She glanced over and saw everyone frozen in panic, not understanding a word. While Kale kept speaking in a language no one else knew, she understood him perfectly. He was asking for coffee. Without thinking twice, she walked over to the machine in the corner. Marcus was still barking out orders and didn't even notice. Lila made the coffee, added a bit of cinnamon and a touch of honey. While everyone was still trying to figure out what to do, she walked up to Kyle with the cup in her hands and said in Korean, "Good morning, sir. I brought you your coffee, and I took the liberty of adding a bit of cinnamon and a little honey to sweeten your day." The whole lobby froze. One of the receptionists dropped their pen. Marcus's eyes widened like he'd seen a ghost. Kale stopped and stared at Lila for a few seconds. Then, suddenly, his expression softened. He took the coffee with both hands, took a sip, and let out a satisfied sigh. Then, still speaking Korean, he asked, "You speak my language fluently?" Lila smiled. "Enough to understand you were asking for coffee." Marcus finally moved and came over to her. "Lila, since when do you speak Korean?" "Since I started watching Korean dramas and studying on my own." "Why?" Kale let out a small laugh, something no one expected to hear anytime soon. He looked at Marcus, then at Lila, and said calmly, "I want her to come with me and be my interpreter." Marcus turned to Lila. "What did he just say now?" Still in disbelief, Lila replied, "He wants me to go with him and be his interpreter." Marcus blinked several times, stunned. "What? She's just the cleaning lady." Kale was already heading toward the elevator, leaving everyone speechless. Lila stood still for a moment until Kyle motioned for her to follow him. Before she could think too much, she left her cart behind and walked after him with no idea what she was getting into. As the elevator doors were closing, Kyle said something in Korean that made Lila's eyes widen. He had just said, "And I want to have coffee with you every day while I'm here." The elevator opened on the top floor, and Lila felt her stomach turn, not just from the ride, but from the completely surreal situation she was in. There she was, in her plain cleaning uniform, standing next to one of the richest men in Asia, who had just told her he wanted to have coffee with her every day. "Mr. Kyle," Lila began, trying to find the right words in Korean. "I can't accept being your interpreter. I'm just a cleaning lady. I'm not qualified for that." Kale stopped in front of the door to the presidential suite and turned to her, his expression serious but kind. "Lila, you speak my language better than anyone else at this resort. And, more importantly, you were the only one who cared enough to understand me while everyone else was panicking." "But sir, I have no experience with business, no idea about contracts, or—" "You know how to listen," Kale interrupted, swiping his card at the door. "And that's more valuable than any degree." Lila nervously fidgeted with her hands, still holding the cleaning rag she had forgotten to put down. "And what if I mess up? What if I say something wrong?" Kyle opened the door to the suite and motioned for her to come in. The place was stunning. A large room with an ocean view, elegant furniture, and decor that probably cost more than Lila's yearly salary. "Lila," Kale said, closing the door behind them, "I'll explain everything to the resort's board. You don't need to worry about that." Lila looked around, feeling completely out of place. Her worn-out sneakers clashed with the marble floor, and she realized she was still wearing her dirty work uniform. I'm really not sure I can do this," she murmured. more to herself than to him. Kyle stepped closer and spoke firmly, but without sounding bossy. "Lila, I'm asking for your help. You saved me from a very awkward situation downstairs. Now I need someone I can trust." There was something in his voice that touched her. It wasn't arrogance or superiority, but a genuine honesty she didn't expect from someone in his position. "All right," she finally said with a sigh. "I'll do it. But on one condition." Kale raised his eyebrows, curious. "If I make a mistake, you tell me right away. I don't want you to be polite just to spare my feelings." A small smile appeared on Kale's face. "Deal." The next day, Lila could hardly believe the transformation. She stood in front of the mirror in the women's locker room, wearing an elegant business outfit that had been delivered to her home the night before, along with new shoes and a temporary badge that read International Communications Assistant. "Oh my goodness," she whispered to the mirror. "Who is this person?" The fabric was soft and high quality, nothing she had ever worn before. The blazer fit her shoulders perfectly, and the skirt was the ideal length. Even the shoes, which she feared would be uncomfortable, felt like they had been made for her. When she arrived at the front desk, every employee turned to look at her. Marcus almost spilled his coffee when he saw her. "Lila," he asked, blinking several times, "is that really you?" "Good morning, Marcus," she replied, trying to hide her nervousness. "Where's Mr. Kyle?" He's in the meeting room waiting for you," Marcus stammered, still processing the transformation. Lila walked through the resort's hallways with a mix of nerves and excitement. Staff, who had barely acknowledged her before, now watched her with curiosity and, in some cases, a hint of envy. She found Kale in the meeting room, looking over some documents. When he saw her, his face lit up with a genuine smile. "Perfect," he said in Korean. "You look like a true professional." Lila felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you for the clothes. They must have cost a fortune." "Don't worry about that," Kale said with a dismissive wave. "Now, I need you to help me understand a few things about this resort." Over the next 2 hours, Kale asked questions that seemed simple at first, but Lila could tell there was a sharp mind behind each one. "How long have you been working here?" he asked as they sipped coffee on the suite's balcony. 2 years, Lila replied. "I started right after finishing high school." "And how would you describe the work environment?" Lila hesitated for a moment. The question sounded harmless, but she felt there was something deeper behind it. "Well, it depends. For the guests, everything is perfect. For the staff, things can be a bit complicated sometimes." "Complicated how?" Lila's honesty began to outweigh her caution. "Marcus, the manager, sometimes treats the staff like we're invisible, and there's a very strict hierarchy here. Housekeeping staff rarely get promoted, no matter how capable they are." Kale nodded, making a few discreet notes. "And what about management? Do you think the resort is well run?" Lila took a sip of coffee, thinking about her answer. "Financially, I think it's doing well. We always have important guests like you." But she stopped, wondering if she should go on. "But," Kale prompted, "sometimes I get the impression that things are done too quickly without much research, like there's a rush to close deals." That made Kale look up from his notes and meet her eyes. "Interesting. You're very observant. Maybe it's because when you're cleaning places, you end up seeing things others don't," Lila said with a shrug. "And what else have you seen?" Lila realized she was talking too much, being too honest, but something about Kale made her feel comfortable sharing her thoughts. "Well, for example, Marcus always gets nervous when important guests arrive. Not excited nervous, more like he's hiding something." Kale leaned forward slightly, clearly interested. "And you think he's hiding something?" "I probably shouldn't say that," Lila said quickly. "It's not professional for me to make assumptions about my boss." "Lila," Kale said gently, "your opinion matters to me. You know this place better than anyone." There was something in the way he said her name that made her heart beat just a little faster. The genuine attention he gave to her words was something she had never experienced before. "Well," she continued, feeling oddly comfortable, "sometimes I overhear things I probably shouldn't, and I get the feeling that Marcus is rushing to close deals, like he doesn't want the investors to have enough time to really look things over." Kale took a few more notes, and Lila noticed he was taking her comments very seriously. "You're incredibly smart," he said, and Lila felt a warmth rise up her neck. "I just pay attention to things. That's a rare quality." Kale smiled. "Most people only see what they want to see." The moment was interrupted when Kale's phone rang. He answered in Korean, and Lila could tell it was about a meeting that had been scheduled for later. After he hung up, Kyle stood. "I need to take care of a few things. Could you meet me at the admin office later?" "Of course," Lila replied, standing as well. As they walked back through the resort, Lila couldn't help but notice the way people were looking at them. It wasn't just curiosity. There was something different about the way Kale treated her. He walked beside her, not ahead. He held doors open for her. He asked her opinion about things others might think were unimportant. "Can I ask you something?" Lila said as they waited for the elevator. "Of course. Why do you trust me so much?" "You barely know me." Kale thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes, Lila, you can get a sense of someone's character in just a few minutes. The way you brought me that coffee yesterday, there was real kindness in that. And that's something you can't fake." The elevator arrived, and as they rode down, Lila felt a mix of emotions she couldn't quite define. There was gratitude, of course, but also something deeper, a connection she hadn't expected to feel. When they reached the ground floor, Lila said she needed to grab some documents from Marcus's office. Kale agreed to meet her later. As Lila headed down the hall toward the administrative area, she heard voices coming from Marcus's office. The door was slightly open, and she recognized his voice, along with Diego's, the financial manager. "We need to get the Korean to sign this contract fast without digging too much," Marcus was saying, sounding rushed. Lila stopped in her tracks, feeling her blood run cold. "But what if he finds out about the irregularities?" Diego asked. "He won't. Not if we don't give him time. That's why I hired the right interpreter. I just didn't expect that nosy cleaning lady to speak Korean." "What now?" "She can translate everything correctly. We'll have to take care of that," Marcus replied in a tone that sent chills down Lila's spine, one way or another. Lila quietly backed away from the door, her heart pounding. Her instincts had been right. Marcus really was hiding something, and now she and Kale were caught up in something much bigger and far more dangerous than they had imagined. Lila spent the rest of the morning trying to process what she had heard. Marcus's words kept echoing in her mind. "We need to get the Korean to sign this contract fast without digging too much." She knew she had to tell Kale, but wasn't sure how to bring it up without sounding like she was making up stories about her boss. When Kale met her at the front desk around noon, she was still clearly tense. "Are you okay?" he asked in Korean, noticing the worried look on her face. Yes, Lila answered quickly, forcing a smile, just thinking about a few things. Kale studied her for a moment, clearly sensing that something was bothering her, but chose not to press. "I was thinking, how about we have lunch together?" he suggested. "The resort restaurant has a great view. And I'd like to talk more about your observations from yesterday." Lila felt her stomach twist. The idea of having lunch with Kyle made her nervous in more ways than one. "Mr. Kale, I don't think that would be appropriate," she said, fidgeting with her badge. "I'm your assistant. It wouldn't be professional." "Lila," Kyle said gently, "I'm inviting you as a friend. Besides, I need your perspective on a few things, and a relaxed conversation might help. But people will see us. They'll talk." "Let them talk," Kale shrugged. "What they think doesn't matter to me." Lila hesitated, looking around. She could already see a few staff members watching them with barely hidden curiosity. "I really don't think this is a good idea." "Please," Kale insisted, and there was something in his voice that made Lila look straight at him. "It would be a favor to me. I hate eating alone." The honesty in his eyes made Lila give in. "All right," she sighed. But just this once. The resort's restaurant was elegant, with tables arranged on a terrace offering a stunning view of the Pacific Ocean. Lila had never eaten there as a guest, only cleaned the tables after others had finished their meals. When they walked in together, the maitre d' almost choked in surprise, seeing Lila not as an employee, but as Kale's guest. "A table for two, please," Kyle said, and Lila translated for the maitre d'. "Of course, Mr. Min," he replied, still eyeing Lila curiously. "Right this way." They were led to a table in the corner with a perfect view of the ocean. Lila sat down stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. "Relax," Kale said, noticing how tense she was. "It's just lunch." "That's easy for you to say," Lila muttered. "You're not the one being watched by all your co-workers." Kale glanced around and saw that several employees were indeed watching them quietly. "You're right," he admitted, "but they'll get used to it. And technically, you're not just a cleaning lady anymore. You're my assistant. Temporarily." Lila corrected him. "We'll see," Kale said with a mysterious smile. The waiter brought the menus, and Lila looked through hers nervously. The prices were sky-high compared to what she was used to. "Order whatever you like," Kale said, noticing her hesitation. "It's all on me. I can't let you pay for my lunch." "Lila," Kale said patiently, "you're working with me now. This is part of the job." After some convincing, Lila finally ordered a salad and a tropical fruit juice, while Kale chose grilled fish with vegetables. "So," Kyle said once they were alone, "tell me more about yourself. How did you learn Korean so well?" Lila took a sip of water before answering. "I started watching Korean dramas when I was 16. At first, it was just for fun. But then I fell in love with the culture and the language. And you studied on your own?" "Yes," Lila nodded. "Library books, online videos, free apps. We didn't have money for private lessons." Kale was impressed. "That's really something. Korean is considered one of the hardest languages to learn." "Well, I had motivation," Lila said with a shy smile. "And time. After work, I studied for hours. And your parents? Were they supportive?" Lila's smile faded a bit. "My mom works double shifts to support us. She's always been supportive. But she didn't have much time to follow my studies. And my dad, well, he hasn't been in our lives for a long time." Kale realized he had touched a sensitive topic and gently changed the subject. "So, what are your plans for the future?" "Honestly," Lila gave a short laugh, "I didn't have many plans beyond keeping my job and helping my mom. I never thought speaking Korean would be useful for work." "You should think bigger," Kale said. "Seriously, you have more potential than you realize." Before Lila could respond, the waiter arrived with their meals. The food was delicious, and little by little, Lila began to relax. The conversation flowed naturally, and she was surprised by how easy it was to talk to Kale. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lila asked after a while. "Of course. Why did you decide to invest in this resort? There must be hundreds of better options around the world." Kale chewed thoughtfully before answering. "My company is expanding into Latin America, and Mexico is strategic for us. But honestly, after meeting you and seeing how things really work around here, I'm starting to question whether this is the right partnership." Lila felt a knot in her stomach, remembering the conversation she had overheard. "What do you mean? Some of the numbers they showed me don't add up, and your comment about how eager they were to close the deal made me think." Lila knew this was the perfect moment to tell him what she had heard. But before she could say anything, her hand slipped as she reached for her juice glass. The red liquid flew straight at Kyle, hitting his gray blazer dead center. A blazer that clearly cost more than Lila made in a year. "Oh my God," Lila cried, jumping to her feet. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The whole restaurant turned to look. Lila was in a panic, trying to blot the stain with a napkin, only making it worse. "It's ruined," she said, nearly in tears. "I'll pay for a new one, I promise." Kale glanced at the stained blazer, then at Lila's panicked face, and did something completely unexpected. He started to laugh. It wasn't a polite or forced laugh, but a genuine, contagious one. "You're laughing?" Lila asked in disbelief. "I just ruined a piece of clothing that probably costs more than my car." "Lila," Kale said, still laughing, "it's just a blazer, and honestly, this is the most genuine reaction I've gotten from anyone in years." "But—" "No buts," Kale said, taking off the blazer and folding it calmly. "Most people get so nervous around me they can barely hold a glass. At least you have an excuse." Lila stared at him, still not believing his reaction. "You're not upset?" "On the contrary," Kale smiled. It was refreshing to see someone being genuinely human. The wave of relief Lila felt was so strong, she nearly collapsed into her chair. "You're very different from what I expected," she said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone colder, more distant, more businesslike." "Well," Kale said, "maybe you're meeting me at a different time in my life." There was something in the way he said it that made Lila wonder exactly what he meant. When they finished lunch, they walked back to the front desk. Lila still felt embarrassed about the juice incident, but Kale seemed genuinely amused by the whole thing. "Seriously," she said for the 10th time, "I'll find a way to pay for a new blazer." "Lila, forget the blazer," Kale said patiently. "I have 20 just like it." When they reached the front desk, Marcus was standing beside a man Lila didn't recognize. The man was tall, thin, and visibly nervous. "Ah, Mr. Min," Marcus stepped forward quickly. "Allow me to introduce Felix Vargas, our official interpreter. He finally arrived." The man stepped forward and began speaking in Korean. "Mr. Min, I apologize for the delay. There was an issue with my flight, but I'm here now and ready to assist you with anything you need." Lila frowned. His accent sounded odd, and he had used an incorrect grammatical form. Kale replied politely, "Don't worry about the delay. How's your Korean?" "I'm fine, sir," Felix answered. But Lila instantly realized he had misunderstood the question. Felix went on, "Marcus told me you're very pleased with the resort, and eager to sign the investment contract tomorrow. Lila felt her blood run cold. Kale had never said that, and she could see by his expression that he had caught the lie, too. Kale looked at Lila, and she gave a discreet nod. "Interesting," Kale said in Korean, looking directly at Felix. "Are you sure you understood our earlier conversation correctly?" Felix hesitated, clearly at a loss. "Yes, of course. We talked about the contract." The pause and uncertainty were enough to confirm Kale's suspicions. "Lila," he said calmly, "I think we're going to need your help for longer than we thought." Marcus glanced between the three of them, clearly sensing something had gone wrong, but not quite understanding what. And Lila, noticing the tense look on Felix's face and Marcus's poorly disguised panic, knew they had just uncovered the tip of a much bigger and more dangerous iceberg. "Well," Marcus said, forcing a smile, "how about we go to the meeting room to discuss the contract details? Felix can translate everything properly now." Kale nodded politely, but Lila could see in his eyes that he was in full investigation mode. They headed toward the meeting room, with Marcus practically pushing Felix ahead of them. Once inside, Marcus spread several documents across the table and began speaking quickly in Spanish, gesturing animatedly. "Felix, please tell Mr. Min we're very eager to finalize this deal. Explain that all the numbers are correct and there's no need for any additional audit." Felix nodded and turned to Kale, beginning to translate. "Mr. Min, Manager Marcus says you expressed great interest in investing in the resort right away. He confirmed you've reviewed all the financial documents and are happy with the results." Lila felt anger rise in her chest. Felix was completely making up the translation. Keeping a neutral expression, Kale replied in Korean, "Interesting. I don't recall saying that. In fact, I'd like to review the financial documents from the past 3 years before making any decision." Felix hesitated for a moment, clearly not fully understanding what Kale had just said. Then he improvised. "He says there's no need to review anything else, and he's ready to sign now." Marcus smiled broadly, but Lila couldn't hold back any longer. "That's not what he said," she interrupted in Portuguese, looking straight at Felix. Everyone in the room turned to her. Marcus frowned. "Lila, you shouldn't interrupt. He's lying," Lila said firmly, then turned to Kale and repeated in Korean, "Mr. Kale, this man is not translating your words correctly. You said you wanted to review the financial documents from the past 3 years, but he told them you were ready to sign now." Kale's face darkened slightly, and he looked straight at Felix. "Is that true?" he asked in Korean. Felix started sweating even more and stammered something incoherent. Marcus, realizing things were getting out of hand, tried to step in. "Lila, I think there may have been a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding," Kale said in Korean, turning to Lila. "Please translate exactly what I'm about to say." Lila nodded and got ready to translate. "Tell Mr. Marcus, I'm very disappointed by the attempt to deceive me. Tell him I will not do business with people who use dishonest translators to manipulate conversations." Lila translated Kale's words, and Marcus went pale. "Mr. Min, please, there's been a misunderstanding." Kyle kept his eyes on Felix as he continued. "I want it to be clear that I will not be signing any documents today, tomorrow, or any time soon. Not until I've had enough time to review everything with my own legal team." Lila translated again, and Marcus started to look desperate. "Lila, tell this man," Kale pointed to Felix, "he is no longer welcome in this meeting. Tell him his services are no longer needed." "Mr. Kale no longer requires your services," Lila told Felix, who looked stunned. But I just got here," Felix protested, "and now you're leaving." Lila replied flatly. Marcus tried to recover the situation. "Mr. Min, perhaps we can find another interpreter." Kale responded directly to Lila in Korean. "Tell him I already have an interpreter. I completely trust you." Lila felt a wave of emotion at the trust in his voice, but translated professionally. "Mr. Min already has an interpreter he trusts." Felix walked out of the room with his tail between his legs, and Marcus looked visibly shaken. Maybe we should reschedule this meeting for a time when Mr. Min feels more comfortable." "Excellent idea," Lila translated Kale's reply. "Mr. Min would like some time to properly review all the documents." When Marcus left the room, clearly defeated, Kale turned to Lila with a look of genuine gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply. "You just saved me from making a very expensive mistake." "I just translated correctly," Lila replied, still a bit tense from the confrontation. "No," Kale shook his head. "You did much more than that. You had the courage to stand up for me when you could have stayed quiet and kept your job safe. Lila felt a warmth in her chest at his words. Well, technically speaking, you're my boss for now. I have to protect your interests. Cale smiled, but there was something deeper in his expression. Lila, can I trust you? The question was simple, but full of meaning. Yes, she answered without hesitation. You can. Then I need your help to understand what's really going on here. Something doesn't feel right. And I have a feeling you've noticed that, too. Lila took a deep breath, knowing the time had come to tell him everything. Yesterday, I overheard a conversation between Marcus and Diego, the financial manager. They were planning to push you into signing quickly, so you wouldn't have time to investigate, and Marcus admitted he delayed the original interpreter on purpose. Cale nodded, not looking surprised. That explains a lot, and it confirms my suspicions about the numbers they gave me. What kind of suspicions? The reported profits are too high for a resort of this size, and some of the operating expenses don't make sense. Lila felt a chill in her stomach. You think they're lying about the financial situation? I think they're hiding something. The question is what and how much. Kyle stood and walked over to the window, looking out at the ocean. Lila, I need you to do me a favor, but it's something that could put you at risk. What kind of risk? If Marcus and his partners really are involved in something illegal, they won't be happy to know we're suspicious. Lila swallowed hard but kept her voice steady. What do you need me to do? I need you to try to find the real documents, actual financial reports, contracts, anything that could show the real situation of this resort. You want me to spy on my own boss? I want you to find out the truth, Cale said, turning to her. Because if they're trying to trick me, they're probably deceiving others too, and that affects everyone working here, including you. Lila thought for a moment. She could feel she was about to cross a line she couldn't come back from. All right, she finally said. I'll do it. Are you sure? I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm sure. Lila nodded. But I need to do this my way, in my own time. Of course. And Lila? Yes? Be careful. If they find out what you're doing. I know, Lila interrupted. I'll be careful. That afternoon, Lila waited until Marcus left for an outside meeting before putting her plan into motion. She knew she had at most an hour before he returned. She knocked on the door to his office, and when there was no answer, she used her master key to enter. As a cleaner, she had access to nearly every area of the resort. Marcus's office was extremely tidy, almost obsessively so. Everything was in its place, which made Lila wonder if that was a way to control information. She started by looking through the most obvious files, but found only routine paperwork. Occupancy reports, supply orders, employee schedules, nothing suspicious. Then she noticed something odd. The back wall seemed shorter than it should have been, given the layout of the building. Lila took a closer look and found one of the wood panels slightly loose. When she pushed it, it revealed a small hidden compartment. Inside was a folder with documents that made her heart race. Alternate contracts with completely different numbers than the ones shown to Cale. Real financial reports showing the resort had actually been losing money for months. And, even worse, proof that money was being diverted into personal accounts. But the most shocking document was a contract already filled out with Cale's forged signature, transferring a massive sum of money to an offshore account. Lila quickly took photos of everything with her phone, her hands trembling slightly. She was staring at proof of a large-scale fraud that could not only ruin Cale financially, but destroy the entire resort and all the jobs that depended on it. When she finished, she carefully put everything back where it was and closed the hidden compartment. As she stepped out of the office, she almost ran into Diego walking down the hallway. Lila, he asked, frowning, what were you doing in Marcus's office? Cleaning, she answered quickly, holding up the cleaning supplies she always carried. He asked me to tidy up before tomorrow's meeting. Diego studied her for a moment, clearly suspicious, but didn't say anything else. Lila forced a smile and kept walking, but she could feel his eyes on her back. When she got to the elevator, her legs were shaking. She had just uncovered something that could destroy many lives, including her own. Now she had to decide what to do with the information. And, more importantly, she had to find a way to tell Cale without putting both of them in even more danger. As the elevator rose, Lila looked down at the photos on her phone. In her hands was the evidence that could save Cale from massive fraud. But she also knew that, from that moment on, she and Cale were officially at war with people who would do anything to protect their secrets. The bond between them had been sealed, not just by mutual trust, but by the need to survive, and Lila had a feeling the worst was still to come. That night, Lila couldn't sleep. She kept looking over the photos on her phone again and again. The documents she had found were even worse than she first thought. It wasn't just inflated numbers or minor issues. It was a well-organized fraud that had been going on for years. The resort was practically bankrupt, kept running only with money from new investors who were being tricked with fake reports. It was a pyramid scheme disguised as a legitimate business, and Kale would be just another victim if she didn't act. The next morning, Lila arrived at the resort, determined to tell Kale everything. She found him in the lobby, but her heart sank when she saw he was surrounded by 3 men in suits, clearly other important investors. "Lila," Kale called, motioning her over. "These are Mr. Sato, Mr. Lee, and Mr. Garcia, my partners in other ventures. They've come to evaluate the investment with us." Lila greeted the men politely, but she could see that Kale was completely absorbed in business discussions. This wasn't the right moment to reveal the fraud. "Mr. Kale," she said in Korean, "I need to talk to you about something important when you have a moment." "Of course," he replied distractedly. "Maybe later. For now, let's take a tour of the facilities with these gentlemen." Lila watched in frustration as Marcus appeared, wearing a fake smile, and led the group away. For the rest of the morning, Lila tried several times to get close to Kale, but he was constantly surrounded by the other investors. She noticed that Marcus was making sure Kale stayed busy. Around noon, Lila decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed more evidence to strengthen her case, something undeniable, even for the other investors. She went back to Marcus's office, knowing he was busy with the tour. This time, she went straight to the hidden compartment, determined to find something even more concrete, and she did. She found a second set of accounting books. This one showed the real transactions, money being transferred into personal accounts, fake expenses being created, and, most shocking of all, proof that other investors had already fallen victim to the same scheme. Lila was taking photos of the documents when she heard footsteps in the hallway. Quickly, she closed the compartment and pretended to be cleaning Marcus's desk. "What are you doing here?" Diego's voice sounded behind her. Lila turned, trying to look natural. "Routine cleaning," she said. But Diego didn't seem convinced. Marcus didn't ask for cleaning today. In fact, he specifically said not to touch anything in his office. Lila's heart sped up, but she kept her composure. There must have been a mix-up in the schedule. Diego stepped closer, his eyes scanning Marcus's desk suspiciously. "Did you touch anything?" "Of course not," Lila replied, though she could feel sweat forming on her forehead. That's when Diego noticed one corner of a document slightly out of place. "You were going through Marcus's papers," he accused, his voice rising. "I wasn't doing anything," Lila said. "Marcus!" Diego shouted into the intercom. "You need to come here right now." Within minutes, Marcus came rushing in, his face red with anger. "What's going on?" "I caught your employee going through your office," Diego said. "I think she was trying to steal documents." Marcus looked at Lila with a fury she had never seen before. "Is that true, Lila? Were you stealing?" "I wasn't stealing anything," Lila protested. Just what?" Marcus cut her off. "You're not authorized to be here when I'm not around. I have a key because I'm in charge of cleaning." "A key to clean, not to go through my personal documents," Marcus shouted. Other employees began gathering at the doorway, drawn by the yelling. "I want you to empty your pockets," Marcus demanded, "and I want to see your phone." Panic surged through Lila. "If they found the photos, you have no right to go through my phone." "Yes, I do. If I suspect you've stolen confidential company information," Marcus said, holding out his hand. "Phone. Now." I can't," Lila said. "Diego, call security," Marcus ordered. "We'll find out exactly what this thief was doing." "I'm not a thief," Lila protested, but she knew she was cornered. The resort security arrived, and Lila knew that in minutes her cover would be blown. The photos on her phone would reveal everything. "You're fired," Marcus said coldly, "and I'll make sure you never work at any resort in Mexico again." "Please," Lila pleaded, "let me explain." "There's no explanation for theft," Marcus snapped. "Security, escort her out." At that moment, Kale appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. He quickly looked around, seeing Lila surrounded, Marcus furious, and a crowd of employees watching. "What's going on here?" he asked in Korean. Lila looked at him with desperation in her eyes. "Lila is being fired for theft," Marcus explained in English. "She was caught going through my office." Kale looked directly at Lila. "Is that true?" Lila took a deep breath, knowing this was her only chance. "I was investigating because I found out you're being deceived," she said in Korean. "They're trying to steal your money." Marcus, not understanding Korean, grew impatient. "What's she saying?" Cale ignored Marcus completely and kept his eyes on Lila. "What kind of deception?" "Fake documents, false financial reports, forged signatures," Lila said quickly. "I have proof on my phone." Marcus tried to interrupt again. "Mr. Min, this employee is being fired for misconduct. Please don't concern yourself with—" Cale turned to Marcus with a look that made everyone in the room take a step back. "She stays," he said in English with absolute authority, "and I want to hear her side now." Marcus was speechless. "But, Mr. Min—" "Now," Cale repeated, his voice sharp as a blade. The silence that followed was deafening. Lila could feel the strength and authority coming from Cale, and for the first time, she truly understood what kind of man he was in the business world. Marcus, clearly realizing he had lost control of the situation, made one last attempt. "Mr. Min, with all due respect, this is an internal matter for the resort. Lila is my assistant," Cale said firmly, "and any accusation against her concerns me directly." He looked around the room full of curious employees, everyone out except Lila and Marcus. There was no arguing with his tone. Within seconds, the room was empty, leaving just the three of them. Cale turned to Lila. "Now," he said in Korean, "show me the proof." With slightly trembling hands, Lila took out her phone and began showing Cale the photos. Marcus tried to move closer to see, but Cale signaled him to stay where he was. "These are the real documents," Lila explained in Korean, flipping through the images. "The numbers they gave you are completely false. The resort's been losing money for months." Cale studied each photo carefully, his expression growing darker with each image. "And this one?" he asked, pointing to a specific photo. "A contract already prepared with your forged signature," Lila answered, watching as Cale clenched his fists. "They plan to use it to move the money without your actual approval." The silence in the room was heavy. Marcus didn't understand Korean, but he could clearly tell from Cale's face that things weren't going his way. He started to sweat visibly. "Where did you find this?" Cale asked. "In his office." In a hidden compartment behind the wall, Cale finally turned to Marcus, who tried to force a nervous smile. "Mr. Min, whatever she told you—" "Lila," Cale said in Korean, "translate exactly what I'm about to say." Lila nodded, ready for what was coming. "Tell him I know about the fake documents, the stolen money, and the contract with my forged signature." Lila translated word for word, and Marcus's face went white as a sheet. "Mr. Min, there must be some kind of misunderstanding." "Tell him there is no misunderstanding," Cale continued, his voice cold as ice. "Tell him he has exactly 24 hours to prepare all the real documents, or I'll bring in the Mexican and Korean authorities to investigate." Lila translated, and Marcus began to stammer, But, Mr. Min, we can work this out." "Tell him our meeting is over," Cale told Lila, "and that he can leave my office." "Your office?" Marcus asked. "Yes," Cale answered in English, surprising both of them. "As of now, I'm taking over the investigation personally. This office is under my authority." Marcus tried to protest, but Kyle's expression left no room for argument. He left the room like a wounded animal, clearly defeated, but still dangerous. When they were alone, Cale turned to Lila with a look of both gratitude and admiration. "You risked everything to protect me," he said in Korean. "I couldn't let them deceive you," Lila replied, still shaking a little from the adrenaline. "Not after seeing how much you trust people." Cale stepped closer to her, and Lila saw something different in his eyes. It wasn't just professional gratitude. It was something deeper, more personal. "Lila, do you realize what you just did?" he said softly. "You didn't just protect my investment. You may have saved many others from being tricked in the future. I just did what was right." "No." Cale shook his head. "You did much more than that. You showed a kind of courage most people don't have." The moment was broken when Cale's phone rang. It was one of the other investors, and he had to take the call. Lila used the break to process everything that had just happened. When Cale finished the call, he looked at her with renewed determination. "I'm going to investigate this personally," he said, "but I'll need your help. You know this place better than anyone." "Of course, I'll do everything I can, but for now," Cale glanced at the clock. "You need a break. It's been a long, intense day." Lila nodded, suddenly feeling emotionally drained. "Lila," Cale said just as she was about to leave, "would you like to have dinner with me tonight in my suite?" The question caught her off guard. "Why?" "Because I want to talk to you away from all this chaos. And because—" he hesitated. because I'd like to get to know you better. Not just as my assistant, but as a person." Lila's heart skipped a beat. There was something in the way he said it that made her stomach turn with nerves. "That wouldn't be appropriate," she finally said. "Lila," Cale said gently, "after today, I think we've already gone far beyond what's considered appropriate in a typical work relationship." He wasn't wrong, and Lila knew it. "All right," she agreed. "But just dinner." "Just dinner," Cale smiled, and Lila felt something melt inside her chest. At 8 that evening, Lila stood in front of Cale's suite, more nervous than she'd ever been in her life. She had changed clothes 3 times before finally settling on a simple but elegant dress she had bought after her first promotion at the resort. Cale opened the door, wearing a casual shirt and dark pants without his usual formal suit. He looked younger, more relaxed, and even more handsome. "You look beautiful," he said in Korean. And Lila felt her cheeks heat up. The suite had been transformed. The dining table was set with candles, flowers, and a stunning view of the ocean at sunset. It was romantic, without being over the top, elegant without being intimidating. "This is, wow," Lila said, looking around. "I thought we deserved something special after the day we had," Cale said, pulling out a chair for her. Dinner was prepared by the resort's private chef, and Lila had never tasted food so delicious. But what impressed her most was the conversation. Away from work pressures, Cale was funny, thoughtful, and surprisingly humble. In Korea, he was saying, "My grandmother used to say, you can see a person's true character in how they treat someone who has nothing to offer them." She sounds wise. She was. Cale smiled sadly. "She raised me after my parents died in a car accident. She was just a seamstress. But she taught me more about life and business than any university ever could." Lila felt a deep connection to his story. "My mom raised me on her own, too," she shared. "And she also taught me that honest work means more than easy money. Maybe that's why we understand each other so well," Cale said, pouring wine for both of them. As the evening went on, the conversation grew more personal. They laughed over childhood stories, shared dreams and fears. And Lila found herself forgetting completely about their different worlds. "Can I tell you something?" Cale said as they stood on the balcony, looking at the stars. "Of course, when you spilled that juice on my blazer, it was the first time in years someone treated me like a normal person, not like a walking bank account." Lila laughed. "Well, technically, I was mortified, and that's what made it so real." Cale smiled, stepping a little closer to her. The moment grew more intense. They were standing very close, looking into each other's eyes. Lila could feel his breath, the warmth of his body. "Lila," Cale whispered, gently touching her face. She knew he was about to kiss her, and for a moment, she wanted it more than anything. But then reality hit her like cold water. "I can't," she said, stepping back abruptly. "I don't belong in your world, Cale." "Lila." "No." She shook her head, grabbing her bag. "This is crazy. You're a billionaire. I'm a cleaning lady. A week from now, you'll be gone, and I'll just be someone you used to know." "That's not true." "It is," Lila said, walking toward the door, "and I can't let myself forget that." Cale tried to stop her, but she was already leaving. "Lila, please don't go like this." She paused at the door without turning around. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. Min. I'll see you tomorrow, so we can continue our work." And with that, she left, leaving Cale standing alone on the balcony, staring at the stars and wondering how things had changed between them so quickly. Lila cried all the way home, knowing she had done the right thing, but feeling like she had just let go of something that could have changed her life forever. The next morning, Lila arrived at work, determined to keep her distance from Cale. She had spent the entire night thinking about what almost happened on that balcony, and she knew she had to protect her heart before it was too late. When Cale greeted her at the front desk, she responded formally, in Korean. "Good morning, Mr. Min. How can I assist you today?" The coldness in her voice was obvious, and Lila saw a shadow of pain pass through his eyes. "Lila, about last night, Mr. Min," she interrupted. "I suggest we focus on work-related matters." Cale was silent for a moment, clearly frustrated. "All right," he finally said. "But we still need to talk about the investigation." "Of course. I'll be available during business hours." All morning, Lila avoided being alone with Kyle. Whenever he tried to bring up personal matters, she steered the conversation toward professional topics. When he suggested having lunch together, she claimed she already had other plans. By the afternoon, Kale could no longer hide his frustration. "Lila," he said in Korean when he finally found a moment alone with her, "why are you avoiding me?" "I'm not avoiding you. I'm maintaining a proper professional stance." "Proper?" Kale frowned. "After everything we went through yesterday, you want to pretend nothing has changed between us?" Lila's heart sped up, but she forced her voice to stay firm. "Nothing has changed, Mr. Min. I'm your temporary assistant, and you're my temporary boss. You know that's not true. It's the only truth that matters." Lila replied, trying to leave the room. Kale gently took her arm. "Lila, please. I'm not asking for anything you don't want to give. I'm only asking you not to shut me out completely." The sincerity in his voice almost broke her resolve. "Kale," she began, using his name for the first time, "just keep being my interpreter and confidant," he asked, "not just for business, but as a friend. Can I count on that?" Lila looked into his eyes and saw something that made her give in, at least partially. "All right," she finally said, "but only as a friend and assistant." "Only as a friend," Kale agreed, though they both knew there was much more than friendship between them. Meanwhile, Marcus was in his temporary office, plotting his revenge. Lila's discovery of the documents had ruined his plans, and now he needed to find a way to discredit her before she could cause more damage. "Diego," he said into the phone, "I need your help with something, and it has to be today. What do you want me to do?" "We're going to take care of this, Lila, once and for all." An hour later, Marcus put his plan into action. He waited until Lila went to the restroom, leaving her bag in the staff locker room. Quickly, he slipped an envelope of cash into her bag and left. When Lila returned, Marcus was waiting with 2 security guards and several witnesses. "Lila Alvarez," he said loudly, drawing the attention of all nearby employees, "I need to search your bag." "What? Why?" Lila asked, confused. "We received a report that money was stolen from the front desk cash register." Marcus lied. "And you were seen near the area." "This is ridiculous. I didn't steal anything." "Then you won't mind if we check," Marcus said, signaling to one of the guards. Furious but confident in her innocence, Lila handed over her bag. Her heart sank when the guard pulled out an envelope full of cash. "That's not mine," she shouted. "Someone planted that there." "Of course it's not yours," Marcus said sarcastically. "You just stole it from the resort." Many of the employees nearby started whispering. Some looked shocked, others doubtful. Lila felt the world spinning around her. "I swear I didn't steal this money. Someone is framing me." "Lila," Marcus said with fake sadness, "I'm very disappointed. I thought you were an honest employee." "I am honest," Lila cried, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Take her away," Marcus ordered the guards, "and call the police." At that moment, Kale appeared. Drawn by the commotion, he saw Lila surrounded by guards, clearly panicked, and Marcus wearing an expression of false indignation. "What's going on?" he asked in Korean. Lila looked at him with desperation. "They're saying I stole money, but I didn't. Someone put it in my bag." Kyle immediately understood and turned to Marcus. "Explain what's happening," he said in English, his voice sharp. "Mr. Min," Marcus began, "I'm sorry you had to see this, but we discovered that Lila stole money from the resort. We found the evidence in her bag." Kyle looked at Lila, then at the money, then back at Marcus. "Are you absolutely sure she stole this?" "The evidence speaks for itself," Marcus said, clearly pleased with himself. Kale stepped closer to Lila, who was trembling with anger and humiliation. "Lila," he said in Korean, "look me in the eyes and tell me, did you steal this money?" "No." Lila answered firmly, "I would never do that." Kyle studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you." He turned to face Marcus and all the gathered employees. "This woman," he said loudly, taking Lila's hand, "is the most honest person I've met in years." Marcus tried to argue. "Mr. Min, the evidence. Evidence can be planted." Kale cut in. "But character can't be faked." He raised Lila's hand and, in front of everyone, gently kissed it. "She's the only reason I'm still here," he said clearly, making sure everyone heard him. The lobby fell completely silent. Lila felt tears roll down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of gratitude and relief. Marcus went pale, realizing his plan had completely fallen apart. "Mr. Min," he tried again. "Even so, the resort's rules," Kale said coldly, "will now be decided by me. And the first rule is that Lila Alvarez is under my personal protection." He turned to the security team. "Release her immediately." Then, looking straight at Marcus, "And I want a full investigation into how that money ended up in her bag." Something tells me we're going to find some very interesting things. Marcus swallowed hard, realizing he had seriously underestimated both Lila and Cale. Lila looked at Cale, still holding his hand, and knew that no matter how much she tried to keep her distance, their lives were now deeply connected. "Thank you," she whispered in Korean. "Always," he replied, and Lila felt that maybe, just maybe, she truly belonged in his world after all. The next morning, Cale called an emergency meeting with the resort's entire board of directors. Lila was nervous, knowing this would be the moment to reveal all the evidence she had collected. The conference room was full. The general manager, Diego, 2 board members from Mexico City, and Marcus, who was trying to keep a confident look. Despite everything, "Gentlemen," Cale began in Spanish, surprising everyone with his fluency. "I've called this meeting to discuss serious issues we've uncovered in the resort's management." Marcus tried to interrupt. "Mr. Min, if this is about the baseless accusations from yesterday, it's about systematic financial fraud." Cale cut him off sharply. "Lila, please present the evidence." Lila took a deep breath and stood up, connecting her phone to the projector. Her hands shook a little, but her voice was steady. "During my investigation, I found 2 sets of accounting books," she began, showing the first photos. "These are the reports given to Mr. Min, showing healthy profits." She moved to the next image. "And these are the real reports found in Mr. Marcus's office, showing the resort has been losing money for 8 straight months." There was a murmur around the room. The general manager leaned forward, studying the images closely. Lila went on, her confidence growing. "I also found proof of unauthorized transfers to personal accounts, fake expenses created to hide money going out, and, most seriously, she showed the photo of the contract with Kyle's forged signature, a contract prepared ahead of time with Mr. Min's signature forged, meant to transfer funds without his actual approval." The room went dead silent. Marcus was pale, but tried to fight back. "These images could have been faked. This woman broke into my office." "Mr. Marcus," the general manager interrupted, "are you saying this evidence is false?" "I'm saying she had no right to be in my office." Cale calmly stood. "Lila," he said in Korean, "translate exactly what I'm going to say." Lila nodded. "Tell the board I hired an independent auditing firm to verify this information. Their findings came in this morning and confirm everything Lila has shown." Lila translated, and Marcus looked visibly shaken. "Also," Cale continued, "my legal team is already preparing the documents to involve both Mexican and Korean authorities in this investigation." When Lila finished translating, the general manager turned to Marcus with a stern expression. "Mr. Marcus Gonzalez, you are suspended from all duties, effective immediately. While a full investigation is carried out." Marcus stood up suddenly, his polite mask finally slipping. "You're all going to regret this," he said, looking directly at Lila. "Especially you." The threat was clear, and Lila felt a chill run down her spine. "Mr. Gonzalez," Kyle said coldly, "I suggest you choose your next words very carefully." Marcus stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him, and Lila knew she had just made a dangerous enemy. After the meeting, Cale and Lila walked quietly through the resort's garden. The air was tense, and Lila could feel that Cale had something important to say. "You were amazing today," he finally said in Korean. "The way you presented the evidence, how clear and brave you were, it was impressive." "Thank you," Lila replied. But her voice sounded distant. "Are you worried about Marcus's threat?" "A little," she admitted. "Men like him don't take defeat easily." Cale stopped walking and turned to face her. "Lila, can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. How did you learn Korean so well?" "You're not just fluent. You sound almost native. That's really rare for someone who taught themselves." Lila hesitated for a moment, then decided to be honest. "My father was Korean," she finally said. Cale raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Was?" "Yes," Lila sighed. "He met my mother while working in Mexico for a short time. They had a relationship, but when she got pregnant, he went back to Korea and never contacted her again." "And you never tried to find him?" "I don't even know his real name." Lila shrugged. "My mom only knew the nickname he used here, but she used to tell me stories about Korean culture. And when I grew up, I got interested in learning the language. It felt like a way to connect with the part of me I've never known." Cale stayed silent for a long moment, taking it in. "That's why you have such a natural feel for the language," he said, "and maybe why we understand each other so well. You have Korean blood, half Korean, half Mexican." Lila said with a sad smile, and not fully belonging to either world. Lila, Kale said gently, you can belong to any world you choose. There was something in the way he said it that made Lila's heart race. What do you mean? Kyle took a deep breath, as if making a big decision. I've decided to extend my stay in Mexico, he said. This investigation will take weeks, and I want to oversee it myself to make sure justice is served. That's a good decision, Lila replied, trying to keep her voice neutral, and I want you to keep working as my assistant during the entire process. Of course, I'll be available. Kale stopped again and turned to look at her directly. Lila, he said, his voice full of emotion, when all this is over, I want to take you to Seoul with me. Lila was stunned. She stood still, not knowing what to say. Kale, don't give me an answer now, he said quickly. Just think about it. You could see the country your father came from, work with my company, have opportunities you might never have imagined, and leave my mom, my life here? Your mom could visit any time she wanted, or even move, too, if she'd like. Lila felt tears welling up in her eyes. Why would you do this for me? Kale stepped closer and gently took her hands. Because in just a few days, you've changed the way I see everything. Because you've shown me what it really means to trust someone. And because, he paused, because I'm falling in love with you. Lila Alvarez. His words hung in the air between them. Lila felt like her world had turned upside down. Kale? You don't have to say anything now, he repeated. Just promise you'll think about it. Lila looked into his eyes and saw honesty, hope, and a kind of love she never expected to find. I will think about it, she finally whispered. And as they walked back to the resort, Lila knew her life had changed forever. The question now was whether she'd be brave enough to embrace that change. In the days that followed Kyle's proposal, Lila found herself constantly deep in thought. The idea of going to Korea felt like a mix of an impossible dream and a frightening reality. While working, she and Kale maintained a professional tone, but there was a new closeness in how they spoke to each other, as if they were both trying to find their way through unfamiliar territory. One afternoon, while they were going over documents in the meeting room, Kyle noticed Lila staring out the window, lost in thought. Are you okay? He asked in Korean, setting the papers aside. Lila looked up, realizing she hadn't been seeing anything outside at all. Sorry, I was just thinking about Korea, among other things, she admitted. It's hard to picture a life completely different from the one I've always known. Kale leaned forward slightly. Tell me about your dreams, Lila. What have you always wanted to do, but never thought possible? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked about her dreams before. Well, she began hesitantly, I've always dreamed of traveling, seeing the world, learning about different cultures, and maybe working with languages professionally, as a translator, or as a teacher. I've always thought it would be amazing to help people connect across language barriers. Kyle smiled. You know, my company has an entire department dedicated to international communication, and we're always looking for people with your talent and passion. Lila felt a wave of excitement, quickly followed by doubt. Kyle, you can't just create opportunities for me because there's something between us. Lila, he said seriously, I didn't get where I am by mixing business with personal feelings. If I'm offering this, it's because you genuinely deserve it. The sincerity in his voice made Lila's heart race. And what about my mom? This is the only life she knows. Your mother works 2 jobs to support both of you, doesn't she? Kale asked gently. In Korea, with the salary you'd earn, she could stop working if she wanted to, or find something that truly makes her happy. Lila had never thought about it that way before. The idea of giving her mother a better life was tempting. You really think I could adapt? A Mexican girl in Seoul? Lila, Kale said, standing and holding out his hand. Will you take a walk with me? There's something I want to show you. They walked to the resort's Japanese garden, a quiet corner with ornamental stones, a small bridge over an artificial pond, and flowers that bloomed even during Mexico's driest season. This garden was designed by a Korean landscaper, Kale explained. He managed to bring a piece of Asia here to Mexico, adapting local plants to create something completely new, yet still true to its original essence. Lila understood the metaphor instantly. You're saying I could be like these plants? I'm saying beauty and strength can flourish anywhere, as long as they have the right care and conditions. They stopped on the bridge, gazing at the moon's reflection on the water. The night was warm, with a soft breeze carrying the scent of tropical flowers mixed with a delicate aroma of Asian plants. Lila, Kale said softly, can I make a confession? Of course, I've never felt so at ease with anyone before. With you, I can just be myself. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Kale. Lila felt tears forming in her eyes. You make me feel different too. Like I could be more than I ever thought possible. Kale turned fully toward her, his hands gently cupping her face. Lila Alvarez, he said in a low voice, you've made me believe again that some things in life are worth more than money or success. Kale? This time, when he leaned in to kiss her, Lila didn't pull away. The kiss was soft, tender, full of unspoken promises and shared hopes. When they parted, both were smiling. This changes everything, doesn't it? Lila whispered. It changes everything, Kale agreed. And I don't mind one bit. They stayed wrapped in each other's arms under the stars, and, for the first time since they'd met, Lila allowed herself to truly imagine a future with him. While Lila and Kale shared their romantic moment in the garden, Marcus was putting his revenge plan into motion. Using a master key he had kept even after his suspension, he broke into Kael's suite. Marcus knew exactly what he was looking for. The confidential documents Kale had brought about his other investments, information that could be sold to competitors or used for blackmail. He found Kale's laptop open on the desk and quickly inserted a flash drive, copying important files. He also photographed physical documents spread across the desk, including contracts and highly confidential business strategies. Let's see who gets the last laugh, Marcus muttered as he finished copying the files. Before leaving, he carefully planted evidence to implicate Lila in the theft. Strands of her hair he had collected from the staff locker room, a pen she often used, and even a photo of her he had taken from her personnel file. The next morning, Kale was having breakfast when his phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, he answered in Korean. Mr. Min, the voice was male but disguised. I have important information about a theft in your suite. What theft? Kale frowned. Check your confidential documents. And when you see what's missing, know that it was your assistant Lila who did it. That's ridiculous. She has access to your suite. She knows your schedule. And she's desperate for money. Check your files, Mr. Min. The truth is there. The call ended. Kale rushed to his suite and immediately noticed that his laptop had been moved. When he checked his files, he saw that important documents had been copied. Even worse, he found Lila's hair near the computer and her pen on the desk. For a moment, Kale felt like the room was spinning. The evidence was too convincing to ignore, but then he remembered their kiss the night before, the honesty in Lila's eyes, everything they had shared. No, he said out loud to the empty room. This doesn't make sense, but the doubt had already been planted, and Kale knew he had to confront Lila about what he'd found. Even if it meant destroying everything between them, Marcus's trap was working perfectly. The next morning, Lila arrived at work with a smile she couldn't hide. The kiss from the night before had changed everything, and, for the first time, she allowed herself to dream of a future that once felt impossible. When she saw Kyle waiting for her at the front desk, her heart skipped with joy. But something felt off. His expression was cold, distant, not at all like the kind, tender man who had kissed her under the stars. Good morning, Mr. Min, she said in Korean, trying to keep things professional, though she smiled with hope. Lila, Kale answered flatly. I need to speak with you in private. The formal tone and coldness in his voice made Lila's smile fade immediately. They walked in silence to an empty meeting room, and Lila could feel the tension coming off him. Once the door closed, Kale turned to her with an expression she had never seen before. It was pain mixed with disappointment, and something that looked like suspicion. Lila, he began, last night, after we said goodbye, someone broke into my suite and stole important confidential documents. Lila felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. What? That's terrible. Do you have any idea who? Have you been in my suite recently? Kale cut her off. The question completely caught her off guard. No, of course not. Not since that dinner. And that was days ago. Why are you asking me this? Kale hesitated for a moment, as if struggling with himself, then pulled a plastic bag from his pocket containing strands of hair and a pen. Because I found this in my suite. Your hair? Your pen? Lila stared at the items in growing disbelief. Kale, I don't know how those things got there, but I didn't go into your suite. Lila, his voice was full of frustration. You're the only one with access. You know my schedule. You know where I keep my documents. You're accusing me of stealing from you? Lila asked, her voice rising. I'm trying to understand how your personal things ended up at the scene of a crime. Crime? Lila felt tears of anger, and hurt begin to well up. Are you calling me a criminal? I'm trying to give you a chance to explain. A chance. Lila burst out. A chance to defend myself against accusations that should never have been made in the first place. Kyle, after everything we've been through, after last night, do you really believe I could steal from you? Kyle ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. I don't know what to believe, Lila. The evidence could be lying, Lila shouted, but apparently you'd rather trust some objects than trust me. Lila, please help me understand. Understand what? Now the tears were streaming down her face. That after I risked my job to protect you, after I exposed a fraud that could have cost you millions, after I opened my heart to you last night, you still doubt me the very first chance you get. Kale said nothing, and that silence hurt more than any accusation. I trusted you. Lila said sadly, I trusted you completely. And you didn't even give me the benefit of the doubt. Lila, no. She shook her head. Don't say anything else. I understand exactly where I stand in your list of priorities. Lila walked toward the door but paused before leaving. You know what the saddest part of all this is, Kale? She said without turning around. For a moment, I actually believed I could belong in your world, but now I see I'll always just be the cleaning lady you'll never truly trust. She walked out of the room, leaving Kale alone with the weight of her words. 2 hours later, Lila was in the general manager's office, handing in her resignation letter. Are you sure about this, Lila? The director asked. We know you're innocent of the previous accusations. And Mr. Min spoke very highly of your work. I'm sure, Lila said firmly. I can't keep working in a place where my integrity is constantly being questioned. But Mr. Min said it was just a misunderstanding between the two of you. Some misunderstandings can't be undone, Lila replied. When Kyle heard about the resignation, he rushed to find Lila, but she was already gone. He felt devastated, realizing too late that he'd made a terrible mistake. Over the next 3 days, Kyle could barely focus on anything. He went over the situation again and again, and the more he thought about it, the less sense it made to believe that Lila had stolen from him. She had risked everything to protect him before. Why would she betray him now? That's when he decided to investigate on his own. He started by reviewing the resort's internal security cameras, something he hadn't done at first because he trusted the physical evidence. What he found made him furious with himself. The footage clearly showed Marcus entering his suite the night of the theft, leaving with a flash drive, and, worse, deliberately planting Lila's hair and her pen near the computer. Further investigation revealed that Marcus had taken those items from the staff locker room days earlier. There were even audio recordings of Marcus making the anonymous call accusing Lila. Kyle was crushed. Not only had Marcus fooled him, but he had also betrayed the trust of the one person who truly cared about him. And now Lila had disappeared. Kale spent 2 days searching for her throughout the city. Finally, one of her former co-workers mentioned seeing her working at a small roadside cafe on the way to the neighboring town. He drove there and found the place. A simple little cafe with a few tables and a view of the mountains. Lila was outside, cleaning the large glass windows, wearing a plain uniform and her hair tied back in a ponytail. Kale parked and watched her for a moment. Even doing such a simple job, there was a quiet dignity about her that he admired. She worked with care and attention to detail, treating even this basic task with respect. When Lila saw him, she stopped cleaning and just looked at him with no expression. Lila, Kale said in Korean, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain, she replied. Going back to cleaning the window, you made your feelings perfectly clear. I was wrong, completely wrong. Yes, you were. Marcus planted the evidence. I have the security footage to prove it. Lila stopped cleaning again, but didn't turn around. How long did it take you to find that out? 3 days, Kale admitted. Ashamed. 3 days to realize something you should have known from the first second, Lila said bitterly, that I would never betray you. Kyle stepped closer. Lila, I'm so sorry. I have no excuse for what I did. I let fear and suspicion drown out what I knew in my heart. Lila finally turned to face him. You expect me to just forget it happened and pretend everything's fine? I want the chance to earn back your trust, Kale said sincerely. I know I don't deserve it. But, you're right, Lila interrupted. You don't. The words stung. But Kale knew he deserved them. Lila, he said softly, you taught me how to see what's hidden. You showed me that the most valuable people are often the ones no one notices. And I, I was too blind to see that the most valuable person in my life was right in front of me. Lila felt tears forming, but held them back. Nice words, Cale. But trust doesn't get rebuilt with speeches. Then tell me what I need to do, he begged. Tell me how to fix this. Lila looked at him for a long moment, seeing the pain in his eyes, but still feeling the deep hurt inside her own heart. I don't know if it can be fixed, she said finally. Some things, once broken, are never the same again. Cale felt his heart shatter, but nodded, understanding that his actions had consequences. I understand, he said, but, Lila, I love you, and I'll keep loving you even if you can never forgive me. With that, he turned and walked back to his car, leaving Lila standing there with tears in her eyes and a broken heart, knowing he had lost the one thing that truly mattered. A week after their meeting at the cafe, Lila was wiping down tables when she noticed unusual activity on the road. Several cars were heading toward the small place, including a local news van. Her heart raced when she recognized Cale's car among them. Cale stepped out of the vehicle with a small group that included the resort's general manager, some employees Lila recognized, journalists, and, surprisingly, a man she didn't know, carrying simultaneous translation equipment. Lila Alvarez, Cale said loudly in Korean, making sure everyone could hear. I need to make a public statement. The interpreter immediately repeated it in Spanish. Lila Alvarez, I need to make a public statement. Lila stopped what she was doing, confused and a little irritated by all the commotion. What are you doing, Cale? Cale responded in Korean, and the interpreter relayed his words. I am apologizing publicly so that everyone knows Lila Alvarez is the most honest, brave, and honorable woman I have ever met. Then, in front of everyone, Cale knelt down in front of the cafe. The words that followed, carefully translated, echoed for all the cafe staff, curious customers, and the resort team who had come to witness it. I need everyone to fully understand what I'm saying. Cale spoke, pausing for the interpreter to keep up. Lila Alvarez saved my investment, exposed a fraud that could have harmed hundreds of people, and risked everything to protect the truth. And I repaid her by doubting her at the first sign of trouble. Lila felt her face grow warm with all eyes on her, but she also felt tears forming as she heard the sincerity in his voice. Cale, get up, she said. You're making a scene. I need to make a scene because I need everyone to know I made the biggest mistake of my life by doubting you. He turned to the cameras, speaking as the interpreter ensured everyone understood. Lila Alvarez is more than an exemplary employee. She is a person of exceptional character who deserves recognition and respect. Cale stood and stepped closer to Lila. His next words were carefully translated. Lila, will you come back? Not as my assistant, but as the resort's director of international communications, with the salary, benefits, and recognition you deserve. The offer caught her completely off guard. Director, the general manager stepped forward, speaking directly in Spanish. The board approved it unanimously. After reviewing everything you've done, we recognize that you deserve far more than praise. You deserve a career. Lila looked around, seeing familiar faces of co-workers who had come to support her, cameras recording everything, and Cale watching her with hope in his eyes. And Marcus, she asked, in jail? Cale answered through the interpreter. Mexican authorities arrested him yesterday for fraud and forgery. The camera evidence was more than enough. Lila took a deep breath, feeling as if a huge weight had been lifted off her shoulders. All right, she said at last. I accept the position. The small group erupted in applause. Cafe staff smiled and clapped as well. And Lila saw tears of relief in Cale's eyes. 3 months later, Lila was in her new office at the resort, reviewing international partnership contracts. When Cale appeared at the door, Director Alvarez, do you have a few minutes for your CEO? Lila smiled. Over the past months, they had slowly rebuilt their friendship and professional trust, but both had carefully avoided any romantic topics. Of course, Mr. Min, what can I do for you? Actually, Cale stepped inside and closed the door. This isn't about work. Lila raised her eyebrows. No, Lila. Cale walked up to her desk. Will you have dinner with me tonight? Not as co-workers, but as two people who would like to start over. Lila's heart sped up. They had been circling around this possibility for weeks. Cale, she said, I know I've made terrible mistakes. He said quickly, I know I broke your trust, and it will take time to earn it back. But would you be willing to give me a second chance? A real chance this time? Lila looked at him, seeing sincerity and vulnerability in his eyes. Where? It's a surprise. Kale smiled, but I promise it will be special. That evening, Lila was taken to a private beach at the resort that had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. Soft lights illuminated a table set on the sand. Flower petals created a path to the ocean, and gentle music played from hidden speakers. Kale, Lila gasped. This is beautiful. You deserve beautiful things, he said, pulling out her chair. During dinner, they talked like they used to, but with a new kind of depth. Kale spoke about how he had reflected on his mistakes, how he had learned to value honesty and loyalty even more. Lila shared how she had grown both professionally and personally over the past few months. Lila, Kale said as they finished eating, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you still think about going to Korea? Lila smiled. Every day. But now for different reasons. What kind of different? Before, it was about running away from my life. Now, it would be about starting a new adventure with the right person. Kale reached across the table and took her hand. Lila Alvarez, would you like to be my girlfriend? Lila laughed, her cheeks turning pink. Are you officially asking me to be your girlfriend? I'm asking you to be a part of my life in every possible way. Yes, Lila said without hesitation. Yes, I do. Kale stood up and kissed her gently, with the sound of the waves behind them and stars shining above. 6 months later, Lila was at Seoul's International Airport, holding Kyle's hand as they stepped off the plane. It was her first time in Korea, and she was both nervous and excited. Welcome to Korea, Kyle said in Korean, kissing her forehead. The days that followed felt magical. Kyle took her to Gyeongbokgung Palace, where Lila was fascinated by the traditional architecture and the changing of the guard ceremony. It's just like in the dramas, Lila said, taking pictures of everything, and even more beautiful in real life. Kale smiled, enjoying her excitement. They went to Myeongdong Market, where Lila tried foods she had only seen in dramas. The tteokbokki was so spicy it made her cry, but she insisted on finishing the whole dish, making Kale laugh. You don't have to prove anything, he said, handing her some milk. Yes, I do, Lila replied through tears. It's my boyfriend's food. They went up Seoul Tower to see the city lights at night, and Lila was amazed by the view. It's even more beautiful than I imagined, she said, looking out at the lights stretching across the horizon. And we still have so much more to see, Kale said with a smile. They visited the home where Kale had grown up with his grandmother, a small apartment in a traditional neighborhood. Lila met the neighbors, who still remembered him as a child, and they were all charmed by the Mexican girlfriend who spoke fluent Korean. She's perfect for you, an elderly woman said in Korean, making Lila blush. They went to Busan to see the ocean and eat fresh seafood, to Jeju Island to walk through yellow flower fields, and even visited ancient temples where Lila learned about Korean spirituality. But the most special moment came during cherry blossom season. Kyle took Lila to Uido Park, where thousands of cherry trees were in full bloom, forming a tunnel of pink and white petals falling like snow. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, Lila whispered, twirling among the petals like natural confetti. Families were having picnics under the trees, couples were taking photos, and children were running around, trying to catch the petals in the air. It felt like a moment straight out of a dream. Lila, Kale said, kneeling in the middle of the cherry blossom path. Lila stopped spinning and looked at him, her heart racing when she saw the small box in his hands. Kyle? Lila Alvarez, his voice shaking with emotion. You changed my life with a simple cup of coffee and the courage to speak the truth. You taught me that true love is about trust, respect, and growing together. You showed me that the most valuable people are often the ones others don't even see. Tears started to roll down Lila's cheeks as people around them began to notice and pause to watch. In you, I found not just a girlfriend, but my best friend, my confidant, and the woman who makes me want to be a better man every single day. Kale opened the box, revealing a stunning ring that sparkled under the light coming through the cherry blossoms. Lila Alvarez, will you marry me? He asked, and build a life where we can truly belong in each other's world. Yes, Lila shouted, throwing her arms around him. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. Kale lifted her off the ground as cherry blossom petals fell around them like confetti. People clapped, children cheered, and even a few grandmothers wiped away tears. When he set her down, he slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her deeply under the pink petals. I love you, Lila Alvarez. I love you, Kyle Min. A small child came up and offered her a handful of petals, saying in Korean. For the pretty bride, Lila knelt down and thanked her in perfect Korean, making the little girl beam with happiness. She's going to make an amazing Korean, Kyle laughed, watching Lila interact so naturally with everyone around her. I'm already halfway there, Lila replied, admiring the ring. And now I'm going to be completely yours. They walked hand in hand under the cherry blossom tunnel, petals still gently falling around them, knowing they had found something rare and precious. A love that went beyond cultures, social classes, and any obstacle the world could put in their way.